How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. This time we're going to be checking out a video called The Staggering Siege of Haarlem during the 80 Years' War, right? So this one's by a channel called Sand Roman History. Make sure you go check that out. The links will be in the description section down below for the original video, as always. And this one is requested by Zavirus. So shout out to you for this video suggestion. So yeah, we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it and check it out. I did like a series on the 80 Years' War. I don't remember the name of the original channel or whatever, but it was like an 8-part, 7-part series or something like that. So I think this is just going to be kind of like a, I don't know if it's going to be like a whole, the whole war, or if it's just going to be like a snippet of, just a small portion of it. But either way, I guess we're going to find out together. So let's jump into it and check it out. Oh, whoops, wrong button.
On the 11th of December in 1572, a Spanish army under the command of Fadrique Alvarez de Toledo arrived at the Dutch town of Haarlem. This marked the beginning of a siege characterized by subterranean warfare, cruelties on both sides, a sea battle on the Haarlemmer Meer, and the arming of citizens to defend their town. Most famous of all, a woman called Kenau Simonsdochter Hasselaar. The Siege of Haarlem was one of the most discussed and most vividly remembered sieges of the 80 Years' War. There is a 2014 movie called Kenau, various stage plays, historical novels, and even a siege-themed escape room in modern-day Haarlem. This is how contemporary
Okay, so those are books. I wonder what the movie was. These ones look like books, though.
historiography tells the story of the staggering siege of Haarlem.
This looks like it's going to be good.
In 1572, the Iron Duke Fernando Alvarez de Toledo, Duke of Alba and governor of the Spanish Netherlands, launched a campaign in the name of the Catholic Spanish crown to cut off the Protestant Dutch rebels from France, one of the main areas of Protestantism. He first took Valenciennes and then advanced to Mons. According to Christopher Duffy, an expert on siege warfare, it was in the Siege of Mons that for the first time a system of 2 trenches was used in the early modern period. One called circumvallation to enclose the attacked town.
Okay, so then this must have been before the Star Fortresses were built then, right? Because don't the Star Fortresses have those? I think they do.
The attacked town, and one contravallation to keep relief armies off. These siege lines were created by the engineer Chiappino Vitelli, and they would become crucial for siege warfare for the next couple of centuries. On the 19th of September, Mons capitulated. The army of the rebels dissolved, and Alba met little resistance when he advanced to punish the rebellious towns of the northern provinces. The Spaniards made a dreadful exemplum of the cities of Mechelen, Zutphen and Naarden by plundering and by massacring many of the towns' inhabitants. This caused several.
I feel like all the wars back then, that's all they would do. They would plunder because they didn't have any supplies and stuff. So they would just like take what they want from the little villages and stuff. Like I feel like that was just like a common thing in all the old wars.
Massacring many of
even the new wars, I think.
The towns' inhabitants. This caused several terrified rebel cities all over the Netherlands to open their gates to them, and the town of Haarlem came within a whisker to do so as well. Haarlem is situated in the heart of modern-day Holland. It held moderate views on religious affairs and had managed to escape the reformed iconoclasm that took place in 1566. Apart from the fear instilled by the Spanish bloodshed, many of the city's administrators didn't favor to rise in open revolt against the King of Spain, Philip II, so that they sent 4 men to Amsterdam to negotiate surrender with Don Fadrique, the son of the Duke of Alba. However, the commander of Haarlem's defenses, Wigbold van Ripperda, strongly disapproved of these negotiations. He convinced the city guard to stay loyal to Willem of Orange, the leader of the Dutch revolt, who subsequently ordered the city's administration to be replaced by people adhering to his cause.
Okay, so then, yeah, the orange areas would be William of Orange's area, and then the yellow would be the Spanish, right? That's the territory the Spanish have right now.
As soon as the 4 delegates returned, they were convicted as traitors and beheaded. Haarlem would fight.
Yeah, they would. Chapter 2. An easy conquest? Question mark.
Don Fadrique arrived at Haarlem on the 11th of December 1572. The defenses of the city were not particularly favorable. Their main means of defense, a wall 20 foot high, set with round and low towers and surrounded by a wet ditch, was in bad shape.
I mean, but 20 foot tall, that's probably... I mean, they said it's in bad shape, though, but I'm sure it was pretty effective, though. I mean, good luck climbing a 20-foot wall, you know what I mean? Especially when it's surrounded by water.
There was only a single modern outwork, a ravelin before the Kruisport. According to Christopher Duffy, this outwork posed many problems to the Spanish, and it was one of the first instances where the value of such outworks was proven. This outwork prevented a direct bombardment on the city gate. However, the surrounding area could not be flooded and offered the enemy many places to set up camp and earthworks. Because of this, Don Fadrique thought of the town more as an administrative than a military problem. In mid-December, Willem of Orange attacked the Spanish positions.
Why couldn't it be flooded, though? I mean, it looks like there's a lot of water there.
In order to relieve the city from the siege. However, he was unsuccessful, and shortly after, the Spaniards cannonaded the wall near the Kruisport for 3 days. On the 20th of December, they launched a head-on attack on the damaged wall. This was somewhat rushed and unusual because storm assaults without careful preparation were usually not successful during this time. So, after fierce fighting, the hasty Spanish assault was repulsed by the defenders.
So they just got tired of it and just rushed in, huh? They got ahead of themselves, I think.
By the beginning of 1573, the eyes of both the Duke of Alba and Willem of Orange were fixed on the struggle for Haarlem. Meanwhile, Don Fadrique was well aware that encircling the city entirely was impossible because of the size of the town and the river Sparne. It led to the nearby Haarlemmermeer, a massive lake, and allowed for food and men to be brought to and from the city, in winter over the ice by sledge, in summer by ship. It also allowed the defenders of Haarlem to communicate with the towns of southern Holland and to bring reinforcements and supplies to the city. On the 8th of January, Don Fadrique reported to King Philip, quote, "The town is very large, and there is nothing we can do to stop the enemy coming in and going out as they please. That is what makes them put up such a firm defense." End quote.
So, I mean, I thought everybody could just travel most places by water. Is it because they took the defenses down, so then they're coming in right there?
The Spaniards numbered 17,000 to 18,000 men, accompanied by a lot of artillery. However, the continuous fighting, the cold winter, and the pervasive diseases shrank these numbers to less than half at some points in time. The numbers were always subject to change because of the fresh troops arriving at the city. The Spanish faced a garrison of 4,000 soldiers, assisted by 2,000 armed citizens.
It's crazy.
Amongst these was the famous Kenau Simonsdochter Hasselaar, who commanded a company of women defending the walls of Haarlem with swords and pikes, cooking oil, burning pitch, as well as bricks and rocks. Kenau was about 47 years old when the siege began, and successfully ran her late husband's shipyard. However, it seems she wasn't particularly popular because she was involved in numerous lawsuits against her fellow citizens.
Yeah, but she's 47 years old, female. She's running the husband's, what was the business?
It seems she wasn't particularly popular.
Hold on.
Kenau was about 47 years old when the siege began, and successfully ran her late husband's shipyard.
Yeah, she's running her husband's shipyard at 47. That's like man work. Why ain't people liking her? You know what I mean? Like, sounds like she's doing a good, like she's holding it up.
However, it seems she wasn't particularly popular because she was involved in numerous lawsuits against her fellow citizens. She is often characterized as a plump, hulking woman with male characteristics.
Yeah, I was gonna say she a manly female. Like she's working on the shipyard, so maybe that's why she's just a very stern, manly kind of a person.
And up to this day, a particularly masculine female is described as Ware Kenau in some parts of the Netherlands.
Okay, Vallequinao?
masculine female, is described as varequinao in
Vallequinao? I don't know if I pronounced that right or not.
some parts of the Netherlands.
Chapter 3. The Struggle for Harlem.
After the failure to storm the city in December, the Spanish set about a formal siege. The Spanish trenches slowly wormed towards the Ravine, which was abandoned by the defenders on the 15th of January without resistance.
Are those trenches still there, I wonder? That'd be pretty cool.
Don Fadrique ordered another assault on the town on the 31st of January. It was repelled in an even bloodier massacre than the one in December. Christopher Duffy notes that the Spanish commanders learned the hard way that it was not advisable to try storming a somewhat decently defended position. In the famous words of Sébastien Le Prestre de Vauban, probably the most famous siege engineer of the 17th century, quote,
He sounds French. Is that a French name? Let me hear it again.
decently defended position. In the famous words of Sébastien Le Prestre de Vauban, probably
Sounds
the
like-
most famous
I don't know.
siege engineer of the 17th century, quote, haste during a siege does not accelerate the conquest, end quote. That
No, haste only leads to making mistakes.
being not enough, the Spaniards made the unpleasant discovery that the people of Haarlem had pulled down a series of houses behind the walls to completely entrench the town with a newly constructed resilient bastion system. One downcast Spanish captain desperately noted, quote, "Who would believe that we are no further forward than on the first day of the siege?" End quote. Because the work of the past 3 weeks was absolutely fruitless, morale in the badly frustrated Spanish camp had reached its low, and some officers even spoke in favor of abandoning the siege.
Now, it wasn't Harlem, but there was it Leiden? I can't remember for sure. But after the Spanish troops retreated, they found Stampot at the Spanish camp. That's where Stampot came from. I don't know if it was Leiden or, I don't know. I'm not sure if that's right or not, but it was some town. And then every year, I guess they would celebrate the Spanish retreat on that day, on that day of the year, and they would eat Stampot, and then eventually just went from there to everywhere in the Netherlands, I guess.
However,
Interesting.
Alba was determined to get hold of the city and nipped the discussion in the bud. Also, rage against the townspeople of Haarlem ran high amongst the troops. Many lurked for revenge and accepted the toll of the exhausting fight as a price for their vendetta. The war had become so cruel that there was no question of either side taking a man alive. Once again, the Spaniards had no choice but to return to the slow and laborious systematic siege. Despite several sorties of the defenders, they slowly dug their approach trenches and seps towards the new built ramparts above the ground, while their miners fought a subterranean fight against the rebel miners. When they detected an enemy tunnel, they fought a bloody and messy fight in the dark, narrow and muddy corridors of Earth.
Wow.
In the meantime, both sides tried to lower the morale of the other. While the Spaniards executed prisoners in plain sight of the city walls, the defenders placed Catholic statues on the walls and threw some of their last bread over the walls to mock the hungry attackers.
Some of their what bread? Lost bread?
Prisoners in plain sight of the city walls. The defenders placed Catholic statues on the walls and threw some of their last bread over the walls to mock the hungry attackers. This struggle continued until spring. Haarlem remained undiminished.
That's funny. Chapter 4, The Fall of Holland.
On the 28th of May, the people of Haarlem received bad news. The town was completely cut off. A Spanish flotilla coming from the Zuiderzee to the Haarlemmer Meer had defeated the rebel ships in a sea battle and seized Fort Fuik, a stronghold controlling the entrance to the Haarlemmer Meer. This changed the situation drastically.
Well, yeah.
The high numbers of defenders turned into a disadvantage as they began to exhaust the stock of the city's granaries. Hunger became the citizens' worst enemy.
Well, yeah, because now they're cut off with no supplies. They boxed themselves in.
Soon, food had to be rationed. Many people began to chew the leather of their shoes and eventually starved to death.
Wow.
On the 9th of July, the Spaniards repulsed the last attempt to relieve Haarlem. 4 days later, the city surrendered unconditionally. It was spared from plundering, but it had to pay a ransom of 240,000 guilders. Although most of the citizens were spared, the Spaniards executed 1,735 men of the garrison and the leading rebel citizens. After the first few hundred were beheaded by 5 executioners, who worked until they could lift their arms no more, the rest of the condemned men were bound together back to back and thrown into the river Sparne, where they drowned.
Wow.
Meanwhile, Kenau was able to flee. The fall of Haarlem gave the Spaniards a strategic advantage. Rebel-held Holland was now disconnected, as it was cut in a northern and southern part. However, according to historian Peter Gale, quote, "The long duration of the siege was almost as serious for the Spaniards as failure would have been." End quote. The delay gave other cities time to prepare themselves, and the Spanish losses made it clear to all rebels that the Spaniards were far from being invincible.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, guys. That was the Fall of Harlem on San Roman, which is the original channel. And like I said, that was courtesy of Zephyrus. So shout out to you, and take it easy, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Have a super fun, awesome day. Take care.